we're actually going to be starting in the next 30 seconds now that I've hit the button, because it's still delayed. But all these things that I'm saying are going to be repeated. So make sure you don't have that YouTube open, because it's going to be super boring.
Whoa, that's kind of weird, dude. You got some strange duplex things happening. Is that gonna not continue, or is that gonna be
just YouTube channel? You just don't need to have the YouTube stream open while we do.
I don't, but you're open YouTube stream talk like this Corbin.
It's a really good impression.
Thank you.
Is it still happening?
Is it still happening? It's very Max Headroom, dude. It's kind of cool.
It reminds me of the Little Caesars pizza commercials a long time ago. Would you like some pizza?
Pizza. Yeah, it's not like every word, but it was like, it's super Max Headroom. You're like, is it still happening? It's like a latency duplex problem. So we just won't let you talk. Oh my God, there's two of you now. I don't like that at all. That's got to be part of the problem, no? You're concrete5 and Corbin.
I have two now, but let me mute myself. Coming in twice, but am I still doubling now? Am I echoing? So this is
oh my God, yes.
Gonna get all kind. Please like, comment, subscribe.
I can't tell if you're doing that on purpose or not.
I desperately want this to. Can I mute one of him? Wayne likes it.
Is it still doubling though?
Well, wait now. Keep talking.
Am I good? Am I? It's not a protest for doubling, but it sounds.
It's a tongue twister, Corbin.
Seems like I don't know any tongue. The man has great hair.
What kind of tongue twister is that?
I feel like that's better. I feel like that's a little bit better. It's not consistently doing it. It was amazing though. But shall we forge ahead?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's do it.
It's still not broadcasting on YouTube though, is it?
It is.
It says live.
Yep, we're live. people are watching us do it.
Oh my God, he's so Max Headroom. Yeah, it's a little weird. All right, well, I'm just gonna pretend that you're not happening and forge ahead. Put my hand in front of your face. So hello, everybody. It's February, and it's time to do the concrete5 town hall again. Got a bunch of stuff to go over this month, so adjust that so I don't go insane, and let's forge right into it. First exciting piece of news is almost forgot to put this on because it's so present. We're at Sunshine PHP this week. So I don't know what Corbin's doing here. I'm pretty sure he needs to be flying to Florida, and Jess is going to be there as well. And everything I've been told, I haven't been to that one, but I know Andy went last year and everybody said they had a great time. You're also in Miami, so nothing wrong with that. So if you're in the neighborhood and you want to get somewhere a little bit warmer than at least here in Portland where we're having a snow day, head on down to Sunshine PHP and find Corbin and Jess and say hello. Similar or somewhat related, at Sunshine PHP, you will have the exciting opportunity to meet the concrete5 elephant and give him a hug or a snuggle. Sorry, not him, they. Give them a hug or a snuggle. You can go to concrete5 elephant, ELEPHPANT.com to learn more about the concrete5 elephant. And if you are running an event or affiliated with a meetup type trade show kind of thing and interested in having the PHP concrete5 elephant come to your show, there's information on that website that you can fill out, and we'll see if we can make that happen. Additionally, adorable and a good looking website, I think. What else do we have here? Oh, wow, we're selecting things. So we are in the process of finishing our application for the Google Summer of Code internee shenanigans. So that actually needs to be submitted end of day today, first thing tomorrow. So this is lining up with a little bit last minute there, but everything's in. The one thing that we do need to finish is they want you to put a list of ideas together for students to either cherry pick from or kind of use as inspiration. So Summer of Code is basically like Google. What are they doing? They're using their notoriety to connect college students who have the summer off with open source projects that could both use some help and also show them, those students, kind of what it's like to work in the software industry. So they act kind of as a go-between or connector, and yeah, there you go. So we're filling all that stuff out, and there is a hey, the students have to kind of write a little bit of this is what my project's going to be, so Google can help select them, and they're looking for some inspiration for that. So we can come up with some of the obvious ideas of, well, build something with Express, or here's a bunch of core issues that exist in GitHub already. That would be easy things to shave off. But if any of you have any ideas of what would be a compelling idea to add to that list, that would be really nice to have. There is a URL that we could post. I don't know what chat rooms, or somebody else on the team who is brighter with the stuff than I could take the URL out of this agenda and stick it in some kind of chat room so people can get to it. It's in our community forums under Chit Chat. Just made a post that you could throw some content at, and that would help us build out that page, which, as I said, needs to happen ASAP. Next up on the agenda, we've been doing some research into our own marketplace sales statistics, our user database. We've been looking against some lists you can get out there from sites like BuiltWith and Alexa, and our own counting trail of sites that hit us for a update info, and trying to put together a better understanding of really who concrete5 is for. And we talked about this a little last month, but when we first started, we proudly would tell everybody who asked that, well, we're ubiquitous like a screwdriver, and you can use concrete5 for anything, just like you use a screwdriver on a doghouse and a skyscraper. It's a tool, and it's not our job to try to make it for one vertical. And I think there's a lot of I think we've actually proven that to be true. I know, we all have small little websites that we've built for personal projects or clubs or churches and whatnot. And then, as you all know, we also do work for the Army. So we are a very broad base, and that's cool. But as we look at rethinking how concrete5.org and the marketplace and the online community and all that comes together, particularly with version 9, which has multi-site built into it, which kind of begs some licensing questions around the marketplace. We want to do a little bit more, want to be a little bit more deliberate as to what we're offering and to whom and how that can make sense. So interestingly, we kind of had operated under the assumption, and I think this comes from kind of the work that you see at your own shop, and as you guys know, we tend to work for larger clients with bigger problems. And so, we've looked at kind of how concrete5 has matured over the last 10 years, particularly with the version 7 release, and said, oh, well, we think that we're more of a framework for, mid-sized development shops building complicated stuff that they still want to have an easy user interface for. Because that's what we use it for, right? Like our projects with the Army have thousands of admins, and they don't really want to do a lot of training, and so we're able to build complicated things, but anybody can pick it up with a YouTube video. So we went and looked into our marketplace sales and assumed that we would be able to kind of see a similar mapping of, well, over time, more sales would be happening to people who identified as site builders versus site owners. And if you remember, there is that question when you make an account on concrete5, do you consider you have one site to run, you're kind of a site owner, or do you build sites for a living? And so I blithely assumed that, well, it's probably more site developers at this point, because what with Weebly, Wix, and Squarespace, it's, they're taking the bottom out of that market. We had Jess dig in there, and surprisingly found, as best you can tell from the data, that the opposite is true. That if you look back at the kind of nascent early days of 2009, 2010, when we first kind of launched the marketplace, the ratio was really 2 to 1 for site builders to 1 site owner. And over time, in kind of the recent last couple of years, that ratio has flipped to 2 to 1 site owners to site builders. Now, obviously, you got to be careful with statistics, and we're just looking at people who have made an account, bought something from the marketplace, filled out that form. So, obviously they are people who are shopping for an extension. So it's a little, you can kind of make these numbers tell any story that you want, but it was definitely very interesting, and it sparked a lot of discussion here. So we are very eager in getting a better sense of who you are all serving, what types of clients you have, what kind of contacts you're getting. Do you run a site or a few sites for a company? And that's really what you use concrete5 for. Are you working at an agency that's banging out a site every week for small and local businesses? Are you a freelancer in between? Like, I know we're going to get just yes across the board, but we're interested in more anecdotal evidence and kind of stories. And obviously all that driving towards what really makes it special in your eyes. When we first launched back in 2008, and even when we were not open source, back when we first built the first version ever in 2003-ish, we had in-context editing, and nobody else really did. So these days in-context editing is not that much a competitive difference. You can see WordPress trying with Gutenberg to bring more of that experience into their interface, and certainly most of the web builders kind of start around that idea. So what was a very clear competitive advantage or at least differentiator in those days has changed a bit into kind of, well, that's just the right way to do stuff. So this is one of those things where it's you don't see the strengths or failings in your own kids as well as other people might, right? It's really easy to give somebody else advice, but sometimes hard to give it to yourself. So we're really curious to hear, why do you choose concrete5? What is it that makes it a better play for you than the many other options out there? So there is a thread that we just made in the community chit chat forums as well, that I'm sure somebody can post to wherever the chat is that's associated with this. And again, anybody posting to that, we're very eager to have every individual's opinions. We know the answers are going to be broad, and it's not going to just be clearly it's just this, because we are used for a lot of different stuff, but we would welcome more input. Okie dokie. Where are we at? Oh, I think we're ready for Andy to tell us all about 8.5, because there's a release candidate out there, right, Andy? You are muted. Or something. Hello?
Double check that your microphone's configured.
I like how when Corbin says double check, it's double check. Nope. Still nothing from Mount Olympus, where the guru of Andy has yet to grace us with his voice. His words of wisdom will rain down upon us when he figures out his microphone.
Is this any better?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So sorry about that. Yeah. So we don't yet have the release candidate out there. We found some late breaking issues that we really wanted to make sure we ironed out before we started getting people playing with it, because they involve the ability to upgrade. And obviously, if you can't upgrade your 8.4 sites to the 8.5 release candidate, it may not be that useful for tracking the kinds of things that we want to track. But we've done some work in that regard, and it's a lot smoother now for those types of migrations. So we will be getting that out this week as we get through some of the last pull requests that we want to get in there. It's there's a whole bunch of stuff that's going to be in there, and it's not a radical departure in terms of how it looks or how it feels to use, but we've added a lot of nice little things to Express. We've added a ton of different user options in terms of passwords and password expiration and user deactivation settings. We've added the new a user custom attribute to the core, so you can actually tie user objects to pages and files into Express. And we've updated CK editor and done a whole bunch of other little things. We've added some logging, greater customization of logging can happen in the dashboard, and a lot of those subtle improvements to the file manager as well. So that should be coming this week, and we're really excited about it. And we'd love help testing it when it does arrive. So I'm sure I'll be posting in Slack later this week when it's available, and probably to the forums as well.
Nice. Andy, do you want to talk any about that or any more about the logging and kind of some of the stuff we're doing with elk stack and compliance and whatnot here? Just so people have some more context as to like why those
Sure.
changes are coming.
Yeah, there, if you look through the changelog, you might be interested in what we choose to prioritize and when and why. And yeah, there's we have added a bunch of features around kind of some of the enterprise grade features, security and permissions and logging requirements that we have with some of our larger clients. And one of those is we've added a lot of additional logging statements to the core. And because these big clients need to know, for example, when users log in, when they log out, when they fail to log in, when new groups are added to users, when permissions change on pages or files, that kind of stuff. And so we've been adding a lot of logging statements to the core in that regard. And as you might imagine, with our current in 8.4 and earlier approach of just sort of logging everything to a logs table in the database, that we made no distinctions on the sort of threshold or level of the message reported. So if it were a debug message or whatever, it would all just go into the database log. And that was fine when we kind of didn't log very much in the core, except for any custom stuff you wanted to throw in your own code. But that honestly kind of limited our own ability to log stuff in the core. If there were things we might want to log, we'd have to take into account, well, gee, is this going to bloat the logs table, for example, if we log every single time a user fails to log in? And the answer is probably yes. So what we've done in 8.5 is we've added some options. So there's two different kinds of logging configurations now, and there's a new logging settings dashboard page that you can go to configure this stuff and learn more about it in 8.5. And basically the simple configuration, which is the default, logs to the logs database table, and it shouldn't change. All your existing application log stuff, so anything you've done using custom logs in your own code, should still go in there regardless of the level, because we have different logging handlers for that stuff. But any of the core channels, what basically happens is we are only logging to a specific threshold in the database table, and I think it's notice. So anything at the notice level or above, like a fatal error, like an exception or a sent email, that goes into the database logs table, same as it ever did. Then what you can do now in the dashboard is you can change that threshold down to debug if you want to throw more stuff in there. And by doing that, you'll get everything. You'll get Ajax requests will be logged, or curl requests offsite. You'll get anytime a user is granted access to a group, you'll get permission assignments on a page. And moreover, there's another new option in there that allows you to log to a file instead of a database. And then if you're logging to a file, you can also turn off the logs dashboard page, because obviously at that point it's not going to be that useful to you. And when you log to a file, that means you'll be able to use we've been using something called FileBeat to sort of trawl the concrete5 logs on servers and ship them into an elk stack for further analysis, and it works really well for that. And moreover, there's one other sort of that's all in the simple the simple logging configuration, and we also have an advanced logging configuration that uses a third-party library called Monolog Cascade. Monolog is the logging handler we use in the core. And Monolog Cascade basically allows you to configure Monolog in a very, it gives you access to all the different configuration parameters in Monolog through our array configuration syntax. So if, for example, you want to log all emergency logs, not just to the database, but also to a Slack channel, or you want to log it directly to an elk stack in concrete5 right there, you can specify all that by configuring it through our configuration, our PHP configuration arrays, using the advanced configuration option. And there's going to be some more docs coming along that way, but it really is just we really just use Monolog Cascade fully for that, and there's good documentation on the web about how to specify all those advanced configurations in the PHP array syntax. And that will really lets you, what our goal was, people have been writing custom logging configurators and stuff for concrete5 forever using custom code, but we really wanted to be able to make it so that you could configure all that stuff using our configuration layer without having to write custom code. You'll still have to write it in a PHP array, but you know, we can actually configure that stuff from the command line, for example, or something like that. So it gives you a lot more flexibility. It's a little bit less difficult than writing custom code, and we're really excited about it.
Nice. Yep. All because at some point we have to meet a control that says we log everything that happens.
Yep.
Which is kind of crazy, but there we go. That's where
Yeah,
we're heading.
there we go.
That's the deal. Okay. Well, thanks, Andy.
Yeah, thank you.
While I got you unmuted here, we're moving into the shout out section of our program. You want to have some shout outs for people in GitHub?
Sure. Yeah, in the last month, we've had some good pull requests accepted by from Deke87 from Derek, from Mlocati, from Hissy, from Biplob, and Katz, and Fabian, and Hamed Daragi. And yeah, we've I'm sure hopefully I haven't omitted too many others that came in the last month, but the level of attention in GitHub is really high, and that's really great. There was one moment where last week where I was scratching my head over a particular issue that we were having with upgrades, and I saw a pull request come in overnight from Mlocati that was it wasn't the exact way I was going to solve it, but one of the components in there was exactly something that I was hoping to have that I was thinking I was going to have to write myself. So thank you, Mlocati and others for reading my mind.
Nice. And then Mike, do you have any in the interest of shout outs, do you have any people that you want to draw attention to?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, cool. Worked first time. That's a rarity. So yeah, I've been lurking quite a bit in the Slack. I haven't been as active as I would like to be, but I have made kind of a note of a lot of people who have been really helpful in the community. I see often someone popping in with a question, and very quickly people will jump in and try to help, and it's really appreciated. A couple of people I'm always hesitant to make this list because there's so many people in the Slack channels helping out, but a couple of people I noticed this month, C5DK, Kahuya, I'm still not sure how to pronounce that, CAHUEYA. I believe he was helping out on some other things with Corvin at the beginning of the month. Here NT, Wayboat, M. Nakali, are in there quite often, as Andrew was talking about. M. Locati, often helping out with a lot of things. ADZ and John the Fish are often there helping out with different questions. Someone I haven't noticed before, but I actually realized this person is helping out a lot in the dev channel. Rude, I believe it's pronounced, RUUD. Seems to be quite active lately.
Or
Rudd, something. Fabian Bitter and Stu Black 23, also very helpful. Eskima, Masuva, Deek, and there's one, I'm not sure how to pronounce this one, Debunomo, 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 and of course Corvin, he's always in there, jumping in, helping out, and he's like behind the scenes right now, frantically like switching back and forth between channels and YouTube and everything, keeping everything running. That's always really appreciated. Another thing I'd like to point out, something that's kind of been happening behind the scenes the last couple of months, to get the Karma Points leaderboard drawings back up and running. So we kind of ran out of licenses to give away back in, I think it was mid or late August, and I was kind of slow to figure out how to get that working again. But we did get some licenses donated, and it has been working again recently. And so I wanted to give a shout out to M. Nakali, who donated licenses for, I think, 3 or 4 of his add-ons, quite a few. A3020 also donated, I think it was 4 or 5 different add-ons that he had. Masuva donated some licenses as well. And just recently, WebHap, his name is Ward, but he goes by the handle WebHap. He also donated a couple of licenses recently. So I really want to thank those guys, because that's you know, the thing that makes the Karma Points kind of fun is to get those little drawings every week, and you know, it does require someone to actually give us permission to give those out. We don't just hand them out you know, willy-nilly. So really appreciate you guys stepping up and donating those to the community. And if anyone else is interested in donating a couple licenses, feel free to hit me up anytime in the Slack channel, and I'll get it all organized with you.
Nice. Well, thank you, Andy and Mike, and thank you everybody out there that you guys mentioned, and anybody that slipped through the cracks. Thank you as well. We know that's just the tip of the iceberg, and it's really awesome to be part of something that is bigger than any one of us. So thanks for being part of the community. That said, I'm going to shed a little guilt out there. I was chatting with Mike earlier that we have tasked him with kind of re-examining the whole karma, badges, points. How do you get them? What are they for? What else could we do? System. At Cascadia PHP Concrete5 Con this year, we heard a lot from individuals about how that was really compelling and important, and people liked it, and that makes sense. I mean, we've certainly all read plenty of articles about gamification, and yeah, I mean, we're part of an open source project, so we know that people are eager to do good things because of the making the world a better place, but also ownership and notoriety, and you know, many motivations beyond cash, obviously, because it's not a job; it's a volunteer project. So really eager to get all of those views, and hey, have you thought of kind of opinions on badges and karma points? And I know there were some strong opinions at Cascadia around, well, there's the number of karma points that you get for this is out of sync with the number that you get for that. So Mike is very smart and very eager to get all that information, get those views in, and you know, do some math and some lowest common denominators against them. But he's got a form somewhere that has not had as many not applicants, but it hasn't been filled out as much as he would like. So I don't know if you can put a URL to that in wherever we're putting URLs for this stuff, or if we should cross post it into the community thing a bit, but we would welcome more feedback on that. There you go. There's a link here in Slack. I figure Corbin will figure out where to put this karma link, because we would like to hear more from you on that. Okay. Next up on the list here, the file manager UX redesign. We kind of did a little screencasty guy over that, I think, last month, but that was it. I mean, we had some good ideas actually come out of this town hall at that point, but wanted to point out that we have posted that to GitHub. So definitely not done. Just a few comps kind of the base experience, the idea of having an accordion nav where you could get to more details about a file in the file manager, and then the introduction of a detail file page, which we have a detail file page for users. We generally do have detail pages. We kind of have list and detail interfaces all throughout the dashboard in concrete5. And we just don't for the file manager. I don't know how. Like, that was just kind of an organic design thing, that everything was modal overlays. And we've been doing a lot of talking and thinking, and we and looking at the feedback that we got when we did the survey middle of last year around the file manager, that did seem like a consistent takeaway, was that there's just too many options in the little pop-up menu, that some of them are confusingly labeled, and be better off having a just as powerful but simpler interface by bringing in that detail page. So that is up. Again, if you can go to GitHub, there's an issue number 7539. Welcome your comments there. There's more comps coming in terms of kind of how some of those details work. And there might be some things in there that we're not going to build. I don't think too much. I think most of that is reasonably, yeah, that looks like good stuff. But we would love to get everyone's input. That is, I think, really exciting. And I think that the approach that we're taking on that detail view is nice, and it kind of gets towards some of what we wanted to do with the kind of the dashboard style guide in version 7, but we probably didn't quite take over the finish line of having a real structure to complicated dashboard pages. So there's kind of in context help. And if you look at kind of the way a lot of these software as service apps have been maturing over the years, we recently started using Jira again. We had used Jira, I don't know, Andy, like we had used Jira back in like the early aughts, and really it worked. It was like, I guess this is what you have to do, and it was just a lot of clicks and really unpleasant. Yeah, it was not our favorite, and and so we walked away from that, and for a while actually we're enjoying Trello just as kind of a low-level Kanban tool. Obviously, with the introduction of all sorts of compliance concerns and everything that we're doing, Trello is just not gonna cut it. So we looked around, went back into Jira, and they've done some pretty impressive redesigns, and they've moved to a lean development cycle, so they're constantly redesigning it under you, which is at first a little unsettling, and then once you get used to it, really nice. And looking at it, I think also looking at Zendesk is another good example of, look, a support ticket system is not new, right? Like, we've been doing this since the 80s, really. But what's nice about it is just the interface has room to breathe. So, if you've never played with Zendesk, it's a support system, and there are some things that you have to do around automation that are kind of complicated to wrap your mind around. You're making triggers and workflows and building complicated queries of, well, if a support ticket has this string, I want you to organize it this way and do something with it and whatnot. And you can imagine you don't have to imagine, you can go see any number of solutions that are work, but are very bare bones and just not a pleasure to use and really intimidating for a casual business user. And I think what Zendesk got right out of the gate was their interfaces have a lot of room, and they read almost like a documentation page that has functionality to it. So if they're going to give you something like, is this a trigger or a workflow, they're going to explain what those are in text on the page. And they're not going to bury that in a little question mark that you have to find, or that a developer has to choose to remember, oh yeah, I got to write code. Like, it's part of the content of the page. It's not squished in. The page is designed around the idea that someone would read it and make choices within it. And we think that's really cool. So if you look at that GitHub ticket, you will see that the detail page for the file manager has the beginnings of that kind of thinking. And obviously it's all more ipsum, and there's probably room for some standardization and more love there. But really spreading things out and embracing the fact that, yeah, the interface is going to scroll. Scrolling is fine. but that we want to make it less intimidating to get to the detail parts. We know that you can do a lot with concrete5, and it's powerful and complicated, and we've always tried to kind of have that onion skin approach of, right, like we ship with simple permissions, but you can turn on advanced permissions, and like that's always been a model that we like. But I think this approach of saying, look, these detail interface, when you get into a detail page in the dashboard, there's a real opportunity there to take your time, explain things. Don't try to just stack up all the controls because, hey, I know what they are and I'm just trying to get to that click. But, really bend over backwards to do, what we might have just thought of as historically as kind of boring tech writer, like, the save button is how you save. Well, all right, let's explore that. Like, are you saving a draft or the full version? Is that live, or are you saving? Is there a way to roll it back? Like anywhere where you can explain something or make sense. And there's a lot around the file manager that needs that. Even working with Gary, I find myself kind of scratching my head, like, rescan does what exactly? All the thumbnails, just the first one? Like, there's spots where it's like, be really nice to have more built-in contextual help that's not buried. So that's what I like about it, but I'm interested to see what you guys like about it or what you don't. That's fine too. Get in GitHub and tell us it sucks. That'd be okay as well. But there's that. Please comment. Last thing on my agenda before we get to some Q&A is we've been talking about doing training classes again. We mentioned this, I don't know, before the end of the year, that we wanted to set aside some time every Friday and have a this is Friday learning time, and probably do a venue somewhat like this, where we are doing a screencast and spending about 45 minutes talking about a topic with a little bit of Q&A at the end. We would record that and turn those into videos that would work as standalone training. And then we would just kind of keep that time going. So, as people started having more questions and, and perhaps the training videos out there for the kind of 101 using concrete5 stuff was more mature, we might have more, hey, can you really focus on Express and do a 3-part, this is everything you need to know about Express thing. And maybe we would bring in, we would have Andy make a guest appearance and explain to us what's going on in parts of it or whatnot. Anyway, we've got I would call it an initial draft of what those training classes might look like together. And there's a link, again, that will be shared in the mysterious place that I hope someone is sharing links. But that it will kind of break out. This is how you can chunk this into smaller bite-sized bits. So take a look through that Google Doc. And Corbin's telling me the links are making it to the public Slack. And I'm sure when we post to our blog a link to this thing that we're recording on YouTube, I guess, we'll put some links in that blog post as well. So I'm not talking utter nonsense. But here I'm looking at some fun classes, some of which I would enjoy taking, some of which I could probably teach, but not all. So yeah, look through that. Let me know if there's stuff there that just doesn't make sense at all. Or if there's kind of holes that are missing, and we will start to schedule those out and carve out some time to get those going. So there's just a dedicated time that everybody knows, hey, there's something that you can learn, and I do think it's nice to have a little bit of a Q&A at the end of that. So we got a better chance to hear from you and kind of see where the stumbling blocks on the learning curve are. I feel like that is pretty much the agenda. Yep, Sunshine, concrete5.elephant.com, Summer of Code. We need those ideas. What are you using concrete5 for? 8.5 file manager training class. Here we are. So we've got a little bit of time left. I don't know if there's any questions that have been kind of going through we want to talk about, Corbin?
Yeah, we do have a couple questions. Let me know. I switched my microphone, so hopefully I'm not doubling up here.
You sound much better.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we have a couple questions in the list. If anybody has some extra questions they want to ask, feel free to raise your hand in the town hall channel, and I'll add you to the list. The first one is here in T. he's wondering what's new in Express. I know Andy had kind of touched on that there were some changes with Express. It sounds like here and T's hoping for a little bit more elaboration on what that might be.
Sure. Yeah, these are all in the change log, but I can go over them here too. This is nothing, no huge feature updates in Express to report, but a lot of little things that'll make using it more powerful and more useful. For example, we've added a date modified field to every Express entry. So anytime you update something in Express, we track the last change, and then you can actually sort by that in queries and stuff, and that's useful. We've added another, much like we have a sort of text property or custom attributes. In Express, we've added an author property to Express. So the users who create Express entries are tracked now. So you can keep track of which user owns an Express object, for example, and use that for whatever you'd like. And we've added the ability to, right now, when you are setting up associations in Express and you're using the forms, if you've got like a one-to-many association, it shows up as a list of checkboxes, and that's pretty good. But if you've got an entity that could potentially have thousands of associated entries in there, it's not really great for that. So we've added the ability to choose the form factor for that field, and that came from Hissy actually. We have it's a select to search autocomplete for selecting related items in that association. So much like we handle tags in the custom attribute, select custom attribute, where we might have thousands of tags defined in the system, and so instead you just sort of start typing and you get an auto-completed list of what you've already defined. We've done that for associations that you can opt into. And we've also added some functionality to the Express entry list block at the block level. So we let you, right now, the entry list block is good for providing a search for a particular type of Express object, but it's just kind of, all it does is show everything, and you can search it on the front end through the page. But if, for example, you wanted to say pre-populate a list of Express entries on a page based on some criteria, there's no way to do that in Express in 8.4, and we've added that in 8.5. And we've also added the ability to filter that Express entry list block list of results by associations. Right now, you could do searches against the custom attributes, so you could search by name or something like that, but you could not search by associated entries, and you can do that now. And that also came as a pull request from Hissy. And those are the Express updates that are coming in 8.5.
Cool.
So there that
Thanks,
is.
Andy.
Yeah, thank you.
Nice. The next thing we have in the list is from John the Fish. This actually came out of kind of a side discussion we were having during the town hall on some of the Karma Point things that Franz had mentioned. And his question is, what's the plan and schedule for getting the concrete5.org infrastructure put together and cohesive? So he mentions things like documentation and translation and GitHub. And the framing of that was really more specifically like, what's the plan to get these things working together so that things like Karma flows through, and just them being generally cohesive?
Sure. So the plan is the next phase of the plan is exactly that, is the single sign-on provider, rebuilding the My Account area, which would include Karma points and badges, looking at really being able to integrate with third-party tools, because I mean, that is just the way of the world. We're not building everything for everyone. As we've discussed many times in the past, there's more activity in Slack than there is in the community forums, and that's how things go. We're not using CB radios anymore either. But that doesn't mean that every one of those venues should be distributed in just kind of its own black hole. So our vision for the kind of the core of concrete5.org is a unified identity for your concrete5.org person. I'm not going to say identity twice. So that's next. And a lot of the work that we're doing for the Army right now informs that stuff. We're basically doing exactly that, a single sign-on provider for a whole bunch of different concrete5 sites. I think the next challenge for us there is managing permissions centrally. Right now, we've got it working fine as an authentication provider, but not yet a way to kind of manage what you have access to centrally. So what we're going to have it do is be able to kind of connect sites to it, and then it will create group trees in the authentication provider that let you choose, well, who should have access to what from a central location. And that'll be great because we need that, right? Right now, I actually had a private message this morning from somebody in Germany who is very active there, has rebuilt the concrete5 German site and wants to be more active in the Translate program. And we're like, yeah, just talk to Mlokati. And, but then he changed his username from this to that. And now he's like, how do I change it over there on translate.concrete5.org? And I'm like, I don't know, talk to Mlokati. So yeah, we've got that problem, and that's what we need to solve first. That's in progress. I'm not going to give you a schedule because I'm not getting paid to do it, but as soon as we can, and we're getting paid to do something very similar by someone else, so it seems like a no-brainer. That would connect to the Translate stuff. Now, Translate already exists, and I feel like it's built in a reasonably recent version of concrete5 and is somewhat healthy and stable. That is run by Michaela Mlokati, and I think it does the job well. Nobody's told me that it hasn't. Documentation exists. It's a more recent version of concrete5. It's got some fun kind of, hey, this is concrete5 as a wiki type loving that we thought up at one point, and that all works. It probably doesn't work perfectly, but it's also, correct me if I'm wrong, Andy, but I believe it's entirely in GitHub somewhere. So by all means, feel free to contribute on that. So once we get the single sign-on provider and those two guys connected to it, we've got the marketing site, which needs some rethinking. And there again, go back to earlier in this where I'm asking, like, what are you using concrete5 for and what's its compelling difference? Probably shows that those conversations are happening here. We're trying to do a clearer job of seeing where we fit in the larger market of CMSs, and that it's just time to redesign the kind of the top level pages. Some of that stuff is pretty far out of date. Doesn't look awful, but it could look better. And then kind of the big elephant in the room is, well, what about the marketplace and how does that mature? And I think that's the last beast to get over the finish line, and that's still very much up in the air. I mean, we paint different daydreams of, well, we could build it like this, we could build it like that. I know, what do I know? I know some of the failings now are, there's just lots of little practical stuff that has been covered in any number of forum threads. I think one of the challenges that I see with it is it doesn't do a great job of including everything that's happening in the community. If you think about the word marketplace, that's really a venue. Like a marketplace is a bunch of independent stores that are doing different things, right? We have this thing in Portland called the Saturday Market, which started under a bridge, and there's food vendors and there's people who make cutting boards and there's all sorts of stuff. And their job is to provide a reasonably safe shopping destination, but you're working independently with each one of those vendors to get the product or services that you want. We kind of called it a marketplace, but we went a step further than that. It's a little bit more like a store. Like, we've got some pretty strong requirements around support, and I think we had a real vision of everything working with everything perfectly out of the gate, which I think was a good vision to have. I think it pushed us a little bit further than a lot of other open source platforms have, but I don't know if it's really sustainable. So as we get into things, like I know we're talking at Cascadia about how do we embrace software as a service, and how do we get into more of a subscription model where we're not asking people to pay what feels like a lot of money up front, but to a developer is really not that much for the ongoing stability of an app over time. I don't think that the way our marketplace is built really encourage. I can't see that happening very well with the way we have things built now. So that's something that that's a big issue as we discuss what the marketplace should do. Is well, how can we have something, well, maybe more like the way Jira does, where there's here's things that work with Jira Cloud, and here's things that work with Jira on premises. I don't know if that's what we would do, but it's interesting to see what they've done. It's interesting to know that there is a very powerful, robust, fully featured e-commerce solution for concrete5 version. Is it 7 or is it just 8 now? Community commerce, but for modern concrete5 at least, that exists entirely in GitHub and is not in our marketplace. I believe ostensibly because the people behind it don't want to be on the hook to provide support for any one-time fee. And having built, own, and subsequently made for free e-commerce for version 6, I get it. Like, it's very difficult to deliver on the promise that a site owner, not a developer, would expect, or even maybe sometimes a developer. $125 for e-commerce was a bunch of money up front when you compare it to $20 a month on something like Shopify. But you don't control the hosting environment, you don't control the code base and the other things that they're installing. It's by any developer standard, really difficult to provide any kind of support. Back when we used to do support incidents, we would spend more time just getting access to someone's box than we would actually fixing the problem. So there's some issues in there, like, and we want to figure out a way to not throw out the baby with the bathwater. I mean, clearly the marketplace does a great job with some things, but there's some stuff in there that that we want to cast the net a little wider and be able to have better answers for things like e-commerce, where it's like, this is great, but I'm not going to provide support for $100 one time forever. Or Ramon's Block Builder, where here you have an add-on that you really only need to use a couple of times when you're first building a site. How does that work? Like, are people buying it for every site? We buy that for almost every site that we make because it just makes building blocks a lot faster. But if that were a service that we could just go to, configure a block, and download the block, we would do that too, and we would pay to get that block out of that service every time. So there's a lot of unanswered questions there. And so that's a long way of saying I'm not exactly sure when the marketplace is coming together. We're focused on that single sign-on provider and making that work because it's what we're going to have next. It's kind of the foundation for all this stuff. So if you guys want to help, I would say help Mike figure out karma points and badges. And hey, is there a way that we can dial in and connect to Stack Overflow and pulling karma points for events that people are having on Stack Overflow? Let's talk about that. Like, how do we bring stuff in from GitHub? Like, let's get a little bit more energy there. That would help us. We'd match that energy. And then, yes, as Mike is telling me, there's some punkiness around the shared theme that the doc site is using. Any contributions to those, the parts of our concrete5.org stack that are already open source, we're not going to rethink that. So if you want to get involved, go find something to carve out and eat up over there, because that would be really helpful. I hope that kind of answered. I felt like it was a long answer, but there's some content in there.
I think you covered all the bases.
Thanks, Corbin.
We got one more in the list, and this one's from Stu Black. That's Wayne Stewart. He's asking, are there any, this is probably for Andy, are there any plans to move away from the Less compiler, since now, SAS is, Less is still a contender, but it's not quite the, market leader as it was when we implemented it. Are there any plans to move from the Less compiler now that SAS has been an industry standard, and, there's other things like post CSS and things like that? Are there any plans to give that any kind of revitalization?
Yeah, we, in our own projects, we actually use SAS for the themes that we build. So if you look at the Concrete5 Composer project, that's kind of the starting point for all of the packages and custom sites that we build. And it's not just installing Concrete5 via Composer. It also includes a few other nice things like .env for managing different deployment locations. Getting getting the database credentials and stuff that are different based on the your dev server versus your live server. It's got integration with Laravel Mix, which is kind of a nice wrapper around Webpack, so you don't need a PhD to use it. And our actual sort of starter CSS assets there are actually using Sass, and we use that for all of the themes that we build. So yeah, those are, and the reason for that is, those are self-contained sites. Now, when it comes to actual concrete5, that's a whole different kettle of fish. There's a ton of stuff to change there. And I imagine the earliest you might see some kind of migration and revitalization of that would be in version 9. I do know that we are actively looking at Bootstrap 4 for version 9. I know they have less. They're still less first, as far as I know, but they have a Sass version as well, and I've played with that a bit. Obviously, moving to that is no small undertaking because a fair amount of stuff is different in Bootstrap 4, but we do want to keep our tool chain as modern as possible, and we don't want to have to rebuild, build our complete UI toolkit from scratch. And so I imagine when we finally do make that switch, you will see us adopting the Sass version of whatever type of starting point UI library we use.
Yeah, and another thing I wanted to add to that, these starting points or these customizable, less files that are built just in concrete5 tend to be pretty slow, just because it's being done with PHP, and obviously, less isn't built in PHP. There are some semi-official ports for it, and it works quite well, but it is pretty slow. And so that works fine with caching and stuff like that, but it's much more preferable to have your source files in your theme and build your Sass just like you would if it was outside concrete5, and to just use that less customization stuff just for adding that extra layer of theme customization. And I typically recommend people don't rely on that for the entirety of their theme CSS just because of the speed.
Yeah, I agree with that. It was kind of a cool proof of concept that we could use. Because we had a theme customizer back in the 5.6 days that was like our own complete self-contained, our own complete custom theme customizing library, because we literally wrote it before Less or Sass was a thing. And the cool thing about that one is it was using CSS comments to mark what properties were editable, which meant you could actually load a file without, like, it was just processing natural CSS, which I always thought was really cool. So you could edit the CSS file and it would still stay customizable, and you didn't have to understand the idea of a preprocessor or something like that. So we moving away from that, I always thought it was cool that we could use this sort of industry standard way of making a CSS file use variables. And then the same approach to making it use variables would automatically just magically load into the concrete5 style customizer. But I totally agree with you, Corvin. Like, there's more work that we could do in terms of how we present those options, because I don't really want to fully get away from, like, fully disable the ability to customize a theme through that panel. But by the same token, I don't think it's gone quite far enough in terms of, I'm not sure that I would run the theme customizer, for a huge site that had to have all kinds of different customizations on different pages, just because some of the tools just aren't quite there in terms of keeping track of which pages there's no way to keep track of which pages have customizations today, at least from the front end. And there's, it's really pretty easy to reset the customization site wide. So you have to make sure you don't click the wrong button. And I mean, these are not insurmountable problems, and they deserve another look when it comes time to see if we want to keep using Less as the basis for our theme customization.
I do think that's probably in the works for version 9.
Oh, real quick, guys. This is Wayne, guy who just asked a question. What I was saying is, because I think what's happening with me is a lot of the sites that I get are concrete5. A lot of people want me to do maintenance and things like that, and their entire theme is completely all in Less. and it's causing the site to be super, super slow. And I'm just like, well, you can't really build the entire site out. It wasn't really, the compiler wasn't really meant to build out the entire site unless you're doing like customizations. But I think sometimes, I know for me, like I just use Webpack or Gulp to build out our themes and stuff like that, which is probably the best way to go. But I think when I'm looking at a lot of doing a lot of maintenance and things like that, most of the themes are all in less, and they're like, why are my sites so slow? I'm like, because you built the whole site in less.
Yeah, it's interesting. It occurs to me that, style sheets are meant to cascade, and
Exactly.
in our elemental version, we probably have pointed people in slightly the wrong direction because there's only a single main style sheet for that entire site, and it includes all the components, which is super cool. But if if we restructured that style sheet so that 99% of it were static in a CSS file, all the stuff that doesn't change, and then we actually just included, we included a variables file that was basically all the colors that were changeable. Yep. You could probably have the same level of customization in the theme when it comes time to edit it, but the actual loading of the whole thing would take like 1/10 of as long because you're not trying to parse 20 includes and load every single thing through our less parser, when not everything requires. We could get away with having one file with lots of customization that's a lot smaller than just including all customizations in one file along with everything else that's static, for sure.
Okay, cool, great, thanks for the answer.
Sure.
Cool, nice. Last thing we have on deck is Katz. He was asking about an event that's running in Japan. Did you want to talk about that, Katz?
All right. Hi, everyone. So it's quite sleepy at 3 a.m. in the morning over here in Japan. But anyway, so concrete5 Japan, we released the concrete5 10 years ago in April. So we are planning to have some 10th anniversary event probably in June. But we all speak in Japanese, so we are pretty much mainly thinking about organizing some Japanese language event. But if anyone is interested in coming over to Japan sometime in June, it's a bit rainy, but it's rainy season. But if you're interested, coming over, maybe we will consider having English track. So yeah, that's it. So that's for now. That's for we are planning right now.
Awesome. Yeah, we're interested. We talked about this a little bit ago, but yeah, it's quite likely that some of the core team will be there. So you all should jump on that and get Katz the buy-in he needs to firm up those plans, because I think that would be fun. Don't undersell Japan, man. Rainy season's better than the hot season, right?
yeah. These
Not
days,
afraid of a little rain.
Yeah, you don't want to come in August,
right? Awesome. So is there a way that folks should do that? How should people tell you if they want to come
right
in?
now, I mean, it's the preliminary stage of planning. So just hit me on Slack if town hall. Right at the moment, we'll start preparing stuff soon. I mean, even like I don't even know if I even should prepare the website in English. So that's also kind of wanting to know preliminary stage. All right, thanks.
Cool. Thank you, Katz, and thank you everybody else. I think it's time to get back to the grind, or for at least Katz to go to sleep. And yeah, thanks everybody for everything that you're doing and taking the time out of your day or morning or evening or whatever to join us for this. And we will post. I think we've actually managed to record this in a semi-graceful way, so we'll make sure that all the links are all the various places that recording will exist. I think there's a fair amount of breakout things that people can do. So let's get on that. And I'm going to say thank you and hope that Corvin knows how to hang up.
I feel like I know how to hang up. If you don't get kicked out, you might have to leave on your own. But this will be posted directly to the YouTube channel. That stream link has been linked on our blog. You can find it there. And we'll update the description on the video to include some of the links that were mentioned. And yeah, so check out the blog for the next.
I think the description has already been updated.
Awesome.
Nice. Cool. Keep an eye out on the blog for the next scheduled town hall. And thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.